Nick, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Nick, and I run a festival called Electric Fields Festival, which is over in Dumfries and Galloway at Drumlanrig Castle. The festival started last year. It takes place in August. 2,000 people or so, growing next year to double that size. Exciting music, in my opinion, fresh and exciting. Lots of bands from small bands who have done stuff like Hit the Road. So smaller bands, and then we have big headliners who are international artists who have gone on to do great things.
Amy.
Okay, so I'm Amy, and I'm one of the producers in a programme called The Janice Forsyth Show on BBC Radio Scotland. So it's an arts and culture programme, so we do everything from books, theatre, and music. So we have live music sessions and interviews. We also have features like Single of the Week, where we feature a new record and play it Monday to Thursday. So we broadcast 2 to 4 p.m, Monday to Thursday on BBC Radio Scotland and online.
The first point that I really want to make is that when you're starting out and you want people to cover you and to either feature you on the radio or to write about you, it's really important to do your homework. So by that I mean find out what sort of shows might be covering you, find out who might be writing about you, and look out for the type of things that are covering your type of music. Amy, what kind of music do you tend to have on the show? Because you also have acts in session as well, don't you?
Yeah, so we have all different kinds. So, for example, we've had Sophie Ellis-Bextor in session, but we've also have new bands all the time, basically. We have bands like Stanley Odd, we've had bands like Future Islands, but one of our favourite things to do, because it's easier for us, because we can only really have sessions if it's Glasgow or Edinburgh, is to have new Scottish bands in. Janice Forsyth, my presenter, is a really big supporter of upcoming emerging music in Scotland, so we tend to have bands come into her studio and do 2 or 3 songs for us, and then that remains an iPlayer for 30 days afterwards, and it can be heard all over the UK, so it's a really good thing to be doing. I wouldn't expect you all to be our listeners. Our listenership tends to be a bit older, but it means that you're getting heard by people all over Scotland, and it's a really, it's a good
And I
thing.
think it means that you're also getting heard by people who, in the first instance, aren't just your mates or your family. So it's a good way to get noticed to a broader audience. And of course, if you're PRS members, then you'll be getting some cash for that, because it's a pretty popular show. Am I right in thinking that it's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of young acts that get featured? I mean, I've been on the show a couple of times where there's I think 16-year-old musician was performing on the show. I mean, you don't have to be like super established to appear on the program, do you?
No, absolutely not, and that's the kind of thing we try to do with.
Yeah.
That's the thing we're trying to do with Single of the Week. So what we've been doing, we've had a band called Wandering Sons, who were just 2 really, I think they were about 16, 17 from Glasgow. Janice picked up on them. We had them in to introduce their single for a 5-minute chat in the studio with Janice. And then what we tend to do with Single of the Week is we ask you if you'd be interested in doing a session afterwards. We'll book you in the next few weeks, because obviously we know we already like your music. It's just a case of emailing, getting in touch, telling us about yourselves, and if it's the kind of music that would be of interest to our listeners, then we book you in. And even if it's not, if you get in touch and you're better suited for any of the other specialist music programmes that we have in BBC Radio Scotland, we'll pass you on to them. So Vic Galloway, or if you're more into country music, there's Another Country. There's all kinds of kind of specialist music programs, folk music programs. So even if you get in touch with us and we think, okay, you're not quite suited for us, but you could be featured in another program, then that's a really good thing to do as well.
Nick, how do you find out about who's going to be interested in covering you? How do you establish that? Where do you look?
You're totally right. Doing a festival is exactly like starting a band, and we need to get ourselves out there as much as a new band does, and we try and put ourselves in front of loads of people, and that means putting yourself in front of loads of people. Like there's in Dumfries and Galloway, there's Alive FM, which is a Christian radio show, which I've been on. Very starting out, getting yourself out there and to anyone isn't an issue. There's no point in being like, I think we're too cool to go on XYZ, because you get experience. I was on that Alive radio show with a band called What About Wolves, who are from, they're called What About Wolves, they're from Dumfries, and they're quite young guys, but that was the first thing that they had done at all, and so that is, it's a really good experience. First radio I did was with Amy on Radio Scotland earlier this year, and I was super nervous. I didn't have a clue what goes on. I thought you go in, you'd have like an hour setting up, and they'd get you coffee. I think you did get me coffee. That's mean. But you have like a kind of, this is how this works, and this is when you can speak. And it's really difficult to work that out as you go. So if it's something that's a bit smaller, you can work out how that's all done. I would also say that you never know what opportunity is going to come out of doing something or meeting someone who you might think, this is a waste of time, or whatever. If you're applying to a festival or to play a gig anywhere and you're able to say, we were on this show, even if I've not heard of the show at all, it shows that you're doing something, that you've got an interest in actually putting yourself out there. There's nothing worse than a young band who are like, aren't putting themselves out there because they think it should happen to them already. You have to be getting in touch with these guys. You have to be giving a CD. I mean, what I was going to say on that sense is, you've got all these people who are here to give, but giving CDs to each other as well, because you never know who's going to give something to someone else. I've got a 3-hour car journey back home. Should be an hour and a half, but I don't know if you noticed there's a storm on outside. So that's 3 hours that if anyone gives me a CD, I'll put in the car driving home.
We are constantly looking for new bands and new music to play and that kind of thing. And if I know you might not know the email address or how to approach us, but if we get recommendation from, say, Olaf or Nick or one of our other sort of trusted contributors, then we're going to take that seriously as well. So they might say to us, they might be on the show and might say to us, have you heard this great new band? Or if Olaf's written an article about you or something like that, then we're likely to take that seriously as well. So it's better to just get it out there.
There's different types of coverage that you can get, and a preview is pretty useful, because if you've got a gig coming up, then it lets people know about it. Very often these days, a gig is combined with a launch, which just usually means that someone's made 2 new tracks available on a digital platforms. Sometimes they'll have a CD or a vinyl to go with it, and they'll sell those at the gig. But that type of coverage is really valuable, because you can then sell into what you've got coming up. What's really important with this is to think about what you're after, and also think about who you're approaching, because there's quite a few of us that don't actually do reviews, but at least once a week someone gets in touch with me saying, can you write a review of my forthcoming album? Now, there's always 2 things with this. One, I haven't written an album review since 2001, I think. So it says to me that this person hasn't actually bothered to check out what type of thing I do. And the other thing is that, with something like that, with an album review, then you don't necessarily want to take that chance. You might want to feel around to make sure that the person you're contacting is actually going to like your music. So it's really good to do that. If you're doing metal, then it might not be worth hitting up the country show. Alternatively, if you're doing country, you might not want to be approaching a rock show. So that's important. And something that is one of the things that is guaranteed to lose you coverage this is pretty much second after the not having a usable photograph, is timing. In the past month, I think I've had 4 acts get in touch with me who I really liked and I would have been happy to write about. And they've said, can you write about us? And I've said, well, I can't. I'd like to write about this, but you know, our column's out on Sunday and your single came out last week. And this happens all the time. So I think it's really important to know about timings. It varies with different things. So some things are, you've got weeks and weeks you should be getting in touch ahead, and with other things it's a bit more flexible. So I would say with our column you should be leaving at least 3 weeks before you plan to do anything and getting in touch with us. But with some magazines it could be something like 2 months. How far ahead do you plan, Amy?
Yeah, we prefer to know definitely a few weeks in advance, especially with things like Single of the Week. And if we are going to feature you in the programme, for example, Single of the Week also means you go on the BBC Radio Scotland playlist for up to 6 weeks afterwards. So they don't want it to be a single that came out 2 weeks ago that they're now going to put on the playlist for 6 weeks. Also, because each of us, the 4 producers, produce a show each every week. So I can say to my colleagues, I don't have room in the Monday programme to feature this band. Would you guys want them? It might take a couple of weeks for them to decide to feature you or to have you on. So if you make life easy for us, tell us in 2 months we're going to be doing a gig in Glasgow. That's a great reason for us to have you on and speak to you, because we're not a music programme. We feature music. We do an interview with you, or we have you in for a session, but we don't just play tracks apart from Single of the Week. So we kind of want to know a bit about you. We want to know what you're up to. Why are we having you in the programme? Oh, it's because you've got a gig that people that are listening can go to. We have on average 240,000 listeners a week. So some of them might be able to come down to your gig. Some of them might want to buy your record. What's the release date? Oh, it's in 2 weeks' time. So that gives us enough time to plan to have you in. So yeah, same idea really.
I think the other thing is that be aware of deadlines. So if you're not sure, it's okay to email someone and say, you know, when are your deadlines? When do you need stuff by? And if someone does contact you and you're fortunate enough to be contacted, then the first thing you should ask them is, when is your deadline? Because that has 2 purposes. One, it shows that you're professional and you know what the journalist or the producer's job involves. And the other thing, it means that if they don't need it for a couple of days, then you don't have to drop everything you're doing to get whatever it is they need to them. And that's a really important thing to consider, because sometimes with these opportunities, someone's looking to fill a space. For example, in my case, I've not got a photograph from the band I want to feature. So if the band that I'm contacting, or I'll maybe contact 3 bands, the first one to get me a photograph and a link to SoundCloud or to YouTube is the one that I will go for. And it can happen. You should plan weeks ahead, but sometimes if you get that call from someone that's trying to fill a space, or be it on air or in a newspaper, then turn it around as quickly as you can and just make sure you get them it, because that can be the difference between getting coverage and not getting coverage.
I'm going to say something really, really boring, but it changed my life when I realized that if you make a spreadsheet, and don't just do it for the sake of making a spreadsheet, but everyone you're meeting, so for example, us 3, go in your spreadsheet, you find out when Olaf's deadline is, you find out when it's good to contact Amy and when I'm booking the festival. So you can say, this is when to get in touch with them. The next thing is, when did we chase up? What did we send them? What's the notes? So you can start building up a profile on all these different people. And I've got probably a couple of 100 people now that have, it's a bit weird, but I know loads of stuff about them because I put in a note, and that's good. I love it when someone says to me, how's Primavera? Like, I know that you went in May, or like, you know, it's just little bits and bobs so that there's a discussion as opposed to here's a CD, can you listen to it, or here's a track. And I think it makes it as well, you're able to then to track, okay, so when we tried putting out that single, this person did it, and why did they do it? And then you can always go back to them when you're releasing the next thing. Thanks for playing the tune, or thanks for writing about it. Here's the next thing we're doing. Really, and you're even saying thanks for playing that. So you're going back and just you're able to keep that knowledge there, and also you can see who's not writing about you or doing anything, and you can maybe try a different tact with them, because it's that there's a lot of emails flying around for all of us, and it's a bit almost it depends what side of bed you get out of in the morning. But see, when I get up and I have someone that says, we want to play at your festival, as opposed to we really like what Electric feels at like your festival. So it's just an email that's going to everyone. And there's a little bit of it that's like, why should I listen to your music if you're not taking the time to know what I'm doing? Or when I email someone back and they're like, oh, sorry, didn't know we emailed you. Like, great, cheers. It's really good. And it's having that knowledge of what someone's done or written about, or the little elements that really, really actually makes a difference. And that sheet, once you have it, that's an incredibly, if you're in a band, or maybe if you're a backstage person, that sheet becomes your dollar. Like that, people will pay. Tottenham, you'll never sell it. But what I'm saying is, in years' time, you've got a list. If you start from now, 25 years old, 30 years old, imagine how many contacts you have on there. It doesn't have to be people you've met face to face. Just, I spent ages, hours and hours and hours and hours Googling, finding out a lot of blogs have links to other blogs like them. So you just go through, find out what that contact email address is, and you have it there. And it's a really, really good way of measuring your success.
How many of you have had spam emails where someone's just sending you an invitation to, part with cash, or to make use of some service that you don't want? Have any of you had spams? Right.
Candy Crush.
How many of you have replied? Right. So the point that I'm making with this, right, is that if you've got an unsolicited email and the person isn't using your name, and it's about something you've not really got any interest in, you wouldn't reply. And it works the same with anyone you're contacting. So
it feels like there must be an easier way to do this. When you're writing out an email and you're changing the name in it and changing the details, but there isn't an easier way to do it, and that's the point, really. It's personalized. And when the guys were talking about putting out music earlier, if you make a little CD case and it's like Nick at Electric Fields, we made a, and that's the CD you're giving. That in that pile that we get through. By the way, on that, I was going to make a really quick note on that. Never give someone vinyl as will you listen to my track? Because then you end up having to carry around vinyl, and it's really awkward. But
I wouldn't go that far. I'd say choose where you're going to give them vinyl. If you're going into Amy's studio, it's fine. If you're coming round to my house, it's totally fine. But if I am abroad and I'm traveling somewhere, then vinyl's probably not the best thing, and it's an expensive thing to give away. One thing I want to mention with blogs. There's something called Hype Machine that has a list of all the blogs around the world, and it can be genre specific as well. So look out for things that are similar to the type of music you're doing. If you've set up a YouTube channel and there's bands that are doing something similar to your music, you can put that in at the bottom of your video, so fans that are looking for a certain type of band, a certain type of music, will also gravitate towards you. Now, Nick's mentioned the importance of putting someone's name in the email that you're contacting. It's quite simple. If you want someone to spend 10 minutes listening to your music, then you should spend 10 seconds putting their name into the email. But I mean, are there any other ways that you like to be contacted? I mean, if someone's getting in touch with you, Amy, what do you...
Email's still the best. You might not know my name or the name of the other producers, but you should know the presenter's name. So you can write to me if it manages to get to me. Loved the Janice Forsyth show, really enjoyed that conversation that you had about music festivals. make it easy again for us. Tell us in the email the release date, when your next gig date is, and put a link to SoundCloud or wherever your music's available so that I can listen to it quickly without having to email you back and ask for it, because we get hundreds of emails. So it's as clear as possible. Then if it's downloadable in a WAV file, all the better, because then I can upload it into our system, share it with the rest of my team. So I don't like dismissing music out of hand. It might not be to my taste, so I'll send it around the team and say, guys, what do you think of this? I'll send at least 6 a week to our presenter and say, what do you think of this? She's really active in it as well, so as easy as you can make it to listen to. And do not contact me and say, really want to get in Radio 1, because that's, if you want another show again in
Same,
Radio
don't contact us and say, do you know anyone at the Wicker Man?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you, again though, it's one station. If you want to get in contact and say, do you know Vic Galloway's producer, because I think my music would be great for him, because, absolutely fine. But kind of know your audience, know who you're emailing. And
just be normal, be polite. You know, you don't have to sort of send screeds and screeds of text, but just something, this is my band, this is what I do. If possible, have a link to a biography, a bit of a biography about your band. And then your own contact details are really important, including a mobile number to reach you. You should have this on your social media as well, and on your website. And there's a few things that I'm going to leapfrog, because I think that the just because it's really important. Social media is great for building up fans and for getting in touch with people, but you have to remember the main driver behind Facebook is to get advertising money. And so what they do is they change their conditions on a regular basis. Most of you probably were still at primary school when something called MySpace existed. But at one point, pretty much every band in the world was on MySpace, and it just imploded. And everyone who had all these fans, everyone that put everything into MySpace, lost everything that they built up. Now, Facebook constantly changes its conditions. It's harder and harder to reach people through Facebook. So it means that in 2 years' time, it could be pretty much redundant for you as a musician. Whereas your email database and your website will stay as they are. And through the website, you get something called analytics. You can see where people are coming from that are gravitating towards your site. It's a one-stop shop, and it's really easy to get everything where you want it. So if I'm looking for information about an act, I'll generally try and find their website first. You know what the most frustrating thing is going onto Facebook and seeing that there's no music on Facebook, there's no biography, and there's no contact details. That's as good as useless. In fact, rather than actually helping to get you coverage, in my case, it's going to put me off, because I feel that I'd rather go to a SoundCloud link with a little bit about the act, the music that I can hear, and the contact information, or Bandcamp for that matter, and it means that I can link to it as well. Facebook, I've seen bands playing major festivals where they don't have any music on their Facebook page. I've seen other things where they're going on tour, but they haven't put the tour dates into the events section, so they've just stuck a flyer on their timeline, and all of that is useless, and it's irritating. So by all means, have Facebook, but really look at the website, look at setting up a WordPress site. It'll take you a few hours, but all you need is on the website is something where people can listen to your music, so you can embed something. You need something about your biography, a header for your live dates, and a press section where people can download your high-res photographs. and anything else that you'd like them to download. If you've got videos, then you can have a video section. There's a band called Get Your Gun. They're from Denmark, and I mention them not because I'm a massive fan, but because they've actually got a really basic website that has everything on it. So it's getyourgun.dk. And the one thing I would say with them is they've got a zip file to download in the press section. I would just have your photographs there and people can click on them and then download them. But that is the only thing that I would mention in that respect. But do try and set something like that up, because it will make a massive difference. Are there any things relating to social media that you two, other things that you think, because you run the social media side of the show, don't you?
I do quite a lot of it, yeah. So happy to be contacted, if you want to DM us and Twitter to ask for the email address, that's fine, but don't try and keep up the conversation that way. Once you've got the email address, email us. But if you are coming onto the show, tweet us, tweet about us. We'll retweet, we'll promote you. It really frustrates me when we have people in the show and we're tweeting about them and you guys aren't sharing it with your friends and that kind of thing. We've got a Facebook page as well. So again, it's kind of knowing who you're approaching, and if you're following us and you're tweeting us and you're tweeting about us, then we're more likely to engage with you, I guess.
Actually, this is a really important point, because let's get to that stage where, a band's been booked by you for the festival, or you've made them single of the week or got them in for a session. Presumably at that point their work doesn't end. What would you say is a wise move once someone's been booked for Electric Fields?
What you should do once you've been booked, as Amy says, is tweet, make noise about it. One of the cool things about Facebook you can't do on your website so much is get your personality across. And other bands like Twilight Sad, Father Son do it brilliantly, where their fan base absolutely love what they're putting up, and it's interesting, and you make it less a notice board and more a board of this is what we're up to. And we love that as well. I love it if there's a band that has the personality that we're looking for, and we'll get it across. That's really important.
Amy, what would you say? Someone's been booked for a session on the show. They know that they're going to be in there. They know that this is going to be on the iPlayer for a month. What should they do?
Yeah, tweet us, share the link, say you're really excited to be on, but share it and we'll share it, and we'll share it with our 15,000 Twitter followers, and we'll then BBC Radio Scotland will share our tweet to even more followers, and our presenter will tweet to her 15,000 followers as well. It can only benefit you to share it. Like I say, sometimes with sessions we put them up forever on the website, so people can hear your music. We also, that's a good point about the Facebook page and that kind of thing, because we also put up a link to your website when you're on the show on our website page, which again is up there for everybody. If it's a Facebook page, there's the slight, not all of our listeners are on Facebook. Our presenter, for example, loves Twitter, doesn't really use Facebook. So if you have a really easy to find website with your gig dates and everything there, again, that can only benefit you because people will be able to find it through us. So yeah, it's just trying to be as active and engaged with us as possible, and we'll do the same with you guys.
If you get on the Janice Forsyth show and Janice says, "Oh, this is the best thing I've heard all year," it's okay for you to quote that. We write all our Scotland on Sunday pieces so that you can pull a quote out of that and stick it on your press release or stick it on your website, and you're totally allowed to do it. So we've talked a lot about the digital world, but what kind of things can people do to promote their music and promote themselves in the real world? Nick, what would be, you want to get the word out about your festival? Do you sit in your lair in Dumfriesshire in your control room sending out emails, or are there any other approaches that you favour?
No, just that. basically. No, we the more you can do, like, so I'm going to talk from a band perspective as opposed to a festival. If you've got a scene thing that you can do, so we can see like there's something that's really happening with a band, really small band, and they're selling out. Look at La Fontaine's. They just sold out very nearly selling out the Barrowlands, which is incredible. That's just building it from a really small scene, getting really loyal fan bases. But that is from doing small gigs and making them good, and people go, "That's great." And I think it's the same for for a festival, for anything. As long as you're building up, and it's really exciting. Things like having a T-shirt. If you're going on the show, you're going to meet Olaf somewhere, you give like a T-shirt or something like that song, you'll be surprised the amount of people that end up wearing those T-shirts around, and that's a cool thing to have, and probably a bit more memorable than doing anything. It's the smaller things, I'd say. Someone gave me a really good thing. They gave me a banana, and on it they'd written on like their band and stuff like that, and I put the banana in my bag. I was getting the train back, and I was like, I'm really hungry, and I had that banana there. Looked up their band up on Facebook, and their website, and listened to them all the way home because they had that really cool wee thing. I think that's a great way of doing it. Probably 9 times out of 10 that banana gets squished and the thing gets thrown out, but that's much more memorable to me.
I think that there's part of this as well that you've underlined here, and it's approaching people. Come up and speak to people. Even if you don't have a CD with you on the day or a flyer, it's always good to have a couple of those sorts of things with you. But if you approach people and then when you contact them, say, we had a chat off the record, or I met you at this gig, and you follow it up pretty soon afterwards, then that's a really good way of making that connection or reconnecting with that person. And I think that it's really important that you do that. It's the same if you're going to other gigs. If you're going to other people's gigs, make the effort to approach other folk, get their contact details, get their emails. And if you're playing gigs, something that is super important is getting the emails of the people that are at that concert. Now, a really good way of doing that is selling your tickets online. So you want to use a online ticketing service like Eventbrite that allows you to get someone's email address. There are some services that keep that data, so forget them, because that's the most valuable thing you can have when you're starting out. There's something called MailChimp, which is really worth using when you get those emails. So say you sell your tickets via Eventbrite or a similar service, you can then take all those emails and names and put them into your MailChimp. And then every time you play in that place, you'll have that list of people that came to that gig. And they're free up to a certain point. And by the time that MailChimp is something that you have to pay for, then you're going to be in a pretty good position anyway. So ways of getting people's emails, just give them a badge, give them an incentive to put their details down. Have some clipboards and have more than one sheet of paper, because it does take a minute or two for people to write down their email at a gig. Anyone want to ask a question? I know we've covered quite a lot of stuff, but you want to take the microphone over there, Mikey?
Hi, I was just wondering, on your radio show, what kind of quality recordings would you need? Because if you can home record and they were mastered a bit, would that be fine, or does it need to be a professional recording?
No, it doesn't need to be professional
Cool.
at all. WAV file is preferable, but MP3 will take. Just something that when we broadcast it, it's not going to put people off if they're listening in their kitchen and it sounds distorted or anything like that, but it doesn't need to be professional at all. Calvin Harris, John Newman, when they started out, they were recording in their bedrooms, and the quality of the kind of audio equipment that you're using now in your bedroom is probably, and we'll get back to you and we'll say, do you have a better quality recording? If it's not,
Yeah.
For Jim Gellertley, he likes to have a WAV file, but he doesn't like it if you send him it as an email attachment. There's 50 megabytes. So it's good to have that. Again, if you can have a Dropbox for that, it's quite a good place to host something like that, where you can share the link for them to download. You might not want to have a WAV file on your website in the press section, because everyone can download it then. So it kind of depends on you a bit.
for me, the best thing to do when you first approach and send an email is give a link to your YouTube, SoundCloud, whatever, so I can listen to it. Once I've listened to it, I can ask you for it, and then you can transfer me the WAV file, and I'll be expecting it, and that's probably the best
It's
thing
a
to do.
very, very quick point on that email. If you're sending a 15 megabyte email, or I've constantly got 97% storage used up. So if someone sends me a massive file, it gets deleted straight away, which is awful to say, but that could be the new best band in the world, and I've just deleted it because I won't be able to get anything else. And as Amy says, a link that you listen to, that's brilliant. I want to know more.
I like SoundCloud or YouTube. I mean, I'm trying to cut down on the number of CDs in my house. It's a very gradual process. There are people that do listen to a lot of music in cars, so a CD's quite good in those situations. The other thing to keep in mind is that personal touch that Nick referred to. I ended up writing about an act. If I didn't just write about them, we booked them for wide days because the guy who owns the label sent me a handwritten note, and no one does that anymore. So it was so out of the ordinary that it really stood out. Has anyone else got a question? Yeah, Chris.
Just give a bit of local information. TD1 Radio just got an FM licence last year, and they're just half a mile from here. Jason Moyes is the guy to contact. He's really supportive of the local music scene, and he might be your first step to getting stuff played on the radio. So at TD1 Radio, Jason Moyes.